It is time to engage. All right, we are now here for one of our last chances to compare an Orville episode directly to the same week's Discovery episode. There's some really weird network stuff happening on Fox, so we've got like a 3-week wait until the next Orville episode. But we are talking today about s2e10's Discovery, The Red Angel, and s2e11 from the Orville, Lasting Impressions. So let's talk, starting this off with the Orville. It's nice to have it back. It was a bit of a break there, and it seems like there are 14 episodes in each of the seasons. They're just getting really out of sync at this point because of network weirdness. I don't know, Disney just bought Fox. Maybe they dropped a bomb on the schedule. Who knows? So let's talk about the Orville and the fact that we got another holodeck addiction episode.
Yeah.
Vanya, how did it feel?
I feel like I want them to spread out who's being focused on and also the themes. You know, it's another holodeck addiction episode. It's also similar to having a love interest that's not real or real but not real, kind of with the Isaac thing. And then also it's another Gordon episode when we just watched a Gordon episode. You know, so just like and I realized it was different with the two Mocklin episodes back to back because there was one from season 1 that didn't air. But still, I feel like things are not in the right places necessarily. This one I almost wish it was the one that came right after the big war event, because then because I really wanted it to be something that we didn't have to think about that for a minute. And then they didn't do that, but then they did another Gordon episode.
Yeah, I agree.
So I just feel like the timing of the it's
okay.
all a little off, where the episodes lie.
Yeah, this felt like the Picard goes home to hang out with his brother and fight in a vineyard episode.
Yes.
Sonia, what did you think about another Gordon episode, but kind of a one with the stakes ratcheted way down?
Well, I hadn't thought of that, to tell you the truth. I enjoyed this ratcheted down Gordon. Maybe that's why. And I found I thought it was very clever. Well, I thought those moments when they were opening up the
time capsule.
The time capsule with Tuvok.
Yes.
That was great. No, but back to Gordon. I didn't. It was all right. It was all right for me. I enjoyed seeing him again. Actually, I enjoyed seeing so much of him. Right. In a different dimension than we normally see him. Right.
Yeah.
So,
the B plot was really just a comedy beat about smoking and Mocklins the whole time. Whereas, if we had a more serious B plot, it might have taken us away from the drama of the romance and the heartbreak. But you had a very interesting point. We had Tim Russ, we had Tuvok in this episode, basically being Tuvok without pointy ears.
Yes,
right?
I'm like, wait, he sounds like Tuvok.
Yeah, same cat.
He's not a Vulcan.
Yeah.
No, but I was still happy to see him. I wish they'd used him more. I was disappointed that he was only there for a little bit. Right?
I mean, I gotta tell you, it's the Vulcanist performance I saw this week.
I would say that, actually, I kind of disagree. I think that the comedy part is going back to kind of the season 1 kind of level of comedy, where he keeps kind of saying it's a drama and comedy is like the secondary thing. I feel like what it's missing is a science element, of a B plot. If we're talking something like, for instance, the episode with Riker and Minuet, where he's kind of fallen in love with that character in the holodeck, which is very similar. The B plot is the binary is doing something. So I feel like it needs that science element to make it more Star Trek. So it's like they made, instead the B plot was just a comedy, just a joke, where it could have been something scientific, something, exciting. And it wouldn't, I don't think it would have taken, it could have been colder and not as emotional, but I don't think it would have taken away from the A plot.
Well, like in Hollow Pursuits, when Barclay has that obsessive alter life on the holodeck, there's a very important life-threatening science-y thing happening outside of the holodeck.
Exactly,
so we were able to have some high stakes there. But yeah, the fact that the B plot on this was just, wow, when Mocklins get addicted to nicotine, it is brutal. It was interesting. Sonia, I know you've had experiences quitting smoking in the past. Tell me, did this feel like beating the crap out of your loved ones was pretty much on the level?
I thought they were really restrained, actually, compared to me.
Maybe if you smoked like 500 cigarettes in your first
Yes.
day, then yeah, like
That when
it would have slowed you down.
when 500 cigarettes appeared,
Yeah.
that was an incredible, like there clearly are no health recommendations being given by this particular replicator. The other one's like, yeah, add ketchup, add salsa on Discovery. On this one, it's like, no, 500 cigarettes? Coming right up.
The obsessive part of me wanted to count them to see if they actually placed 500.
Right.
Like there is actually
Oh, I
500
bet.
there.
I
bet
bet.
you there are.
I felt it was interesting that they kept Topa away, that they sent him away while they were smoking. Isn't that, didn't that happen?
I mean, he was at
remember it
school, and
school,
it
but
was
then he
like
with friends.
coincidence. Yeah.
I thought that they could have said when they were caught, when they were being chastised, but Topa is not with us. I thought, oh, it's interesting that they would say that. Do they know that it's bad? Is it bad for? It's bad for the kids, obviously.
Yeah, but did they know that in late 20th century, going into the 21st century, this was like a huge factor? No,
Yeah, but
obviously
because
not.
they could cure it now. That's right.
Yeah.
The doctor said that it was a disease that people suffered that they couldn't cure before, but now they can. But so in a way, it wasn't as a powerful a B plot as it could have been, because it could be cured. So we just had those few laughs and
Yeah, it was
you're
just
right.
it was purely for laughs.
Yeah,
and that's
and they threw it,
fine.
yeah.
It's just that if it's Star Trek,
Yeah.
and we're talking, if we're gonna talk about, they had an opportunity there to make,
because there wasn't a lot of science in the A plot.
the A plot had
It was all
basically
feelings.
basically
Yeah,
no
all feelings.
science.
It was just history.
It had like a simulator.
Yeah.
But it didn't take that opportunity like, TNG or something.
Although
would take.
one really great moment in the simulator that I loved was when he shut down the program, the bed disappeared,
Yeah.
and he slammed under the ground.
Yeah,
You're
there
like,
seems-
oh right, that would occur.
Yeah, but it's weird because the rules change, right? So when he answers the phone on the bridge, is the program still running?
It seems
Do you
like
know
the
what I
program.
mean?
Yeah,
It just never
seems like,
stops running.
It seems like he's got a dedicated server running her program.
Yeah.
So that he can interact with it.
I love that part. I thought it was funny, but I didn't. It made absolutely no sense.
It was very weird. Like she's still living her life
Yeah.
when he's not around.
And even when he comes in, it's just kind of just like it's at the next point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a very alive, thing.
But I really get how excited he would be to have that experience, because normally the experience is somebody wrote this. So
Yes.
it's like watching a documentary when all you've ever seen is a narrative piece of fiction.
Well, it actually is funny that they had Tim Russ on, because remember on Voyager he wrote that program that they all were
If the
obsessed
Maquis
with. If
ever-
the Maquis
yeah.
took over, and it was him that kind of was there too.
That is a great point.
And so I thought, because remember how Paris particularly, who loves like stories from our century, like is the 20th century, like buff.
Aficionado.
Yeah. So, and he was the one who was like, oh, I just need more story, So he was excited about the fact that it wasn't just anybody. It was that a person that he knows has built this thing, and that he could see like where it would go. Our obsession with story now, and like how it differs maybe in the future.
Yeah, I guess in the future Disney takes over everything, and the giant monoculture of Disney Netflix is able to give us only one thing, so anything else is fascinating. That could be it.
Yeah.
Sonia, I want to start talking about Discovery. Okay. We got to find out who the Red Angel was. Now, you weren't quite as like entrenched in a theory of who the Red Angel was as Vanya and I were. Right. We're both wrong. You're more correct. But we're both wrong. What did you think of the reveal? First, the reveal of Michael, it's you in the first like 5 minutes, and then in the last moment, who it truly was.
I thought of Vanya as soon as I heard that, Michael, it's you, and I went, okay, so we know. So where's this gonna go? And I was taken in by a lot of things that were happening, but to get to the reveal. But right before the reveal, as they were neutralizing the Red Angel's crystals, I thought, wow, Michael's going to be looking at herself in the future. Yeah. Wow, I was excited. I was thinking, wow, what's going to happen? How it's going to be like Spock, remember?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Okay, how are they going to play this? Truthfully, I'm not jazzed by it being her mother. I feel like it just put a wrench in an already convoluted scientific, thread. And so I had an emotional reaction to her seeing her mother. And I thought, oh, that's nice, but now what are they going to do? Now what's going to happen? Because I'm thinking, so what we also learned from this was that, or at least I did, the future AI and the Red Angel are not one and the same.
Yeah,
right?
they're definitely
they're at odds.
At odds, yeah.
So who is the future AI? And before the reveal, I was thinking, so if the Klingons lost the Red Angel suit, who got it? What's happening? So there's all that happening, and then the mother comes up, and it's just even more confusing. So that's what's going on in my head right now.
I've got to say, when Ariam had her 5-minute funeral, and they tried so desperately to pull on heartstrings for a robot we never really knew.
Oh yeah.
And we got past that and into if you were trying in a writer's room to come up with the most anticlimactic way to tell us who the Red Angel was, that was it. Like, oh, hey, so it was in Ariam's brain, Mike, you're the Red Angel. And I was like, okay, I have come to expect a slightly better version of Discovery than I did last season. And when they did that, I thought, oh, wow, that's the worst. That's the literal worst way you could possibly explain who it is. And I'm sad to say I didn't see a twist coming because I expected it to be that bad. When it was that bad, I was like, oh, shit, they're just going to be terrible. So when it wasn't her at the end, I was thrilled. And plus,
really?
it's a great actress from The Wire. I've really and she's also in Jessica Jones. Like every time this actress pops up, I'm delighted. But when she first looked up, I was like, first her hair's down. I'm like, ooh, Michael grows her hair long. Then she looks up. I'm like, oh, Michael changes a lot.
Yes,
I was like, she really ages,
differently,
but,
right?
And totally all of a sudden looks like a different person. Because I was like, age, makeup, what are we gonna get? What are we gonna get? And then it wasn't until she said, "Mom," I was like, oh, okay, all right, okay, I get it. All right, that's where we're going.
Matt, I wasn't disappointed by the reveal. I think that everyone except me, it seems, was expecting it, right? And so you guys talked about it, and it made sense when you talked about it. I thought, okay, it's probably going to be Michael. So it's Michael. And then I thought, all right, so that isn't supposed to be the biggest part of the story. That's all I figured. And then the biggest part of the story it wasn't a great big part of the story in the end. Like, I agree with you. It was unsatisfying. But for me, it was unsatisfying for different reasons.
Let's swing it over to a satisfying moment.
Yes.
Spock's butt shot. Now,
You're gonna make me talk about that.
There's this amazing moment when Spock's played by Peck, where Speck is walking towards the trap, the mouse trap, and there's just this long, lingering, tight butt shot on Spock.
What?
Now, I noticed it happening. Yeah. How did you feel, Vanya? What were
I'm blushing. Can you feel like the heat?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to objectify for Mr. Ethan Peck, but it was glorious. Thank you to, I think it's Gershon Phillips. I can't remember the costume designer. Anyhow, thank you for that. Thank you for all the tight clothing.
Which couldn't be any more different than the baggy, weird, square stuff that the Orville folks are wearing.
Whew, that is killing me. And I'm loving that they brought up that it's a band marching band. Yes. But I did want to say something about the reveal. Because
the initial reveal of it's you, Michael, moving on.
Was lackluster, particularly because on Discovery they have a tendency to hold on to things and hold on to things and hold on to things, and this time we were actually really enthralled and actually wanting to have that kind of help, that carrot help, and then be like, whoa, because the Spock thing was kind of whoa. You know what I mean?
They kept giving us fake outs for Spock.
And then it was just Amanda twist my rubber arm. Okay, here he is.
Yeah.
And in the past on season 1, it was kind of we knew the answers because we watched so much TV and watched so much Star Trek that it's kind of it wasn't sophisticated enough for us.
Yeah, they keep building mystery boxes and we're it's a see-through mystery box.
Yeah, exactly. And so this one mystery was actually a good one where we're all who is it? And we can make guesses and have theories and it's cool. And then and even though I thought it was Michael, and I actually sat there and smiled because I was like,
was
my
right.
ego was pumped. I was just like, thank you. I'm glad I'm wearing a tie today. But actually I was just like, that's how they're gonna do it. Tilly's just gonna kind of ramble it out like she usually does, and then that's it. I wish there was some science behind it where they like the DNA was close, where they found out like it was human DNA, and then they, put theories behind that.
Well, and the thing about this fake out that drives me nuts is this episode would not have been concretely different if Michael hadn't figured that out. If they hadn't realized it was Michael. If they were just like, hey, every time Michael's in trouble, the Red Angel shows up.
True, man.
We don't know who it is. It wasn't hiding in Arian's databank. Let's make the trap happen. That whole, if it's Michael, she has to come back and save herself. Like, none of that was necessary for the mechanisms of this episode to happen.
I agree completely. And I feel like they should have cut off the Arian funeral. They should have just told us that they had the funeral.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't get into it because we don't know her enough.
That's right.
And so just
we
be sad about it.
Yeah, we didn't care when you killed her. We don't care when you give her a eulogy.
I was sad when she died, but because I'm a human being. But you don't want any characters to bite it.
I don't know. The bridge crew in the background that we haven't seen, we see them die all the time.
I mean, you don't have to be broken, but you could be oh, that's sad. They lost somebody, and they could have put that into the dialogue and not shown the funeral, and I think it would have been more effective.
I agree.
And what they should have saved those minutes for, what the reveal should have been, is keep it Michael, and then we don't know it's Michael, and then when she lands there, it's Michael, and we're like, whoa, that would have been more boom, in your face. Yeah. Or even keep it the mom, and then when she's there, you're like, it's the mom.
Can I ask a question about that? So bioneural, they did a bioneural scan, and it's supposed to, and it's exactly Michael.
Yeah.
How could a bioneural scan be exactly the same people?
My guess is none of this is true. The thing that was in Ariam's brain is another fake out from here to that. And it's funny, as they were describing the causality of this, I was trying to figure out if the writers are bad or if the scientists they are writing are bad. Because it is some confusing, convoluted, unnecessarily complex shit going on.
Right.
And we are not getting clean storytelling.
Yes.
This episode felt like it was going way too fast and then dragged. And then way too fast and dragged. It's it felt like macaroni and cheese that was simultaneously burned and overcooked.
It
was weird.
I think I mentioned this to you quickly because I was confused. I thought maybe it was just me. So the AI and the Red Angel are at odds, and the Red Angel comes through an unstable wormhole tethered to the future because it's the only way she can get back. Because
of time crystals.
Time crystals. And that's how the AI, according to the show, that's how the AI gains access to the past for information to evolve. But then why, what is the Red Angel? I thought the Red Angel was coming to save Michael, right? And so I guess that's what's happening. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting the future AI to be the problem child, to be the problem, and the Red Angel to be trying to stop the future AI from happening. But that's not it either. So now it's
the Red Angel is causing the problems that are being exploited by the AI.
Yes. Yeah, so why? Yeah.
No, it's it's a time paradox. It's
it's a causality.
Because basically the Red Angel is trying to do the right thing.
By what? But trying to do what?
To stop these things from happening. But it seems like as a result of that, it's causing more.
So let's back this up. The things that the Red Angel has stopped from happening. She stopped a bunch of people we don't care about during World War III from getting killed, and then they went to a place that we never hear about again. So that's important. She also stopped, right? She also stopped a bunch of. It was a great episode, but it doesn't factor into
the whole story.
She also showed up when everybody on Kaminar was about to get basically wiped out, which is a planet we've never heard from and never does anything important in the history of Star Trek. So that's important. And she's also saved Michael's life, who's a character we've never heard of from Spock or anyone in the history of all of Star Trek. She does nothing important or noteworthy. So that's important. What exactly is this character coming back to save?
Exactly.
She's trying to stop the AI from nuking all life in the galaxy, which we've never heard of before. Like, this is a prequel, guys.
Yeah.
Do you have to make it all from scratch in a time we're familiar with?
Yeah.
Again, I have to go back to the impetus of this show being real screwed up. Like, everything about this show is giving us something, taking it away, and then replacing it with something else that is inconsequential. Bringing me to Arium, the actress who had a moment when she stepped on, the blonde girl, who was going to Arium Station, is the actress who was playing Arium last year.
Yes.
Same bird, no makeup. Because she was on the bridge, she has a 5-year contract, just like Doug Jones, just like everybody else, but I guess she didn't like her makeup? And this entire, let's kill Arium, let's hire another actor, let's make a big stink about this, seems to have been built entirely to get one actor to no longer wear her makeup. Which goes back to season 1, where they remade the Klingons entirely just to hide one actor inside of the makeup. It's like all of these giant story decisions are being made because production design mistakes are awful or backwards.
What always seems to happen with Discovery that we always talk about, it always comes back to, is they simplify things that need to be complicated and complicate things that need to be simplified.
Yep.
It's always this way. They complicate makeup where it just needs to be simple. They complicate storyline where it should be just tell us, cut that funeral, get rid of that.
And if you're going to do something that is completely out of left field, like here's Arium, she's a robot, it basically makes Data irrelevant. Unless this is something that, Eric Soong came up with before Noonien Soong came up with something better. Like, you are staring at the connective tissue, and Discovery's not noticing that it's connective tissue, and not labeling it as connective tissue, and not letting this be a prequel. They are at every turn finding a way to make this peripherally attached to Star Trek, without caring at all about the fact that it's laying on top of, explored moments in the history of Star Trek.
It does make you kind of concerned about, what they're going to do with the future. Like, you look at the Picard show.
Yeah, because it's the same people making that show.
Are they is anything even going to be the same? You know what I mean? Or any of the characters. Is the character even going to be the same?
Well, 30 years later, I guess you can come up with all kinds of reasons to make him a different Picard.
That's a good excuse.
Yeah, it's a good excuse.
Right now, when it's before everything, stuff we should know, it isn't a good thing.
Yeah, there's a much bigger gap between TNG and the movies to the Picard show than there is between the original series and Discovery. Like, we have plenty more reason to be like, hey, look, Romulus is destroyed, I guess. You know, like, they can go into that stuff.
They can do all these kinds of things.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Romulus is destroyed. Because if it is, then it'll be like a proper continuation from Nemesis, terrible as it was. And it'll be very interesting to see if Romulans have anything to do with that storyline, because they've done a call out for, I think, a young half-Romulan character that they're casting. So it seems like Romulus has something to do with the Picard show, and that would be cool, because, I mean, that's one area that they can't really explore at all in Discovery, because it takes place before we've even seen one.
It's brand new, totally brand new. It can be totally brand new. I just don't know why you're right, why they're creating situations that are brand new in a prequel, like something that we know should be in canon.
Because we take a look at what Manny Cotto did in the 4th season of Enterprise. That show's not great, but that 4th season is perfection from the standpoint of a prequel. You are building stories inside of stories and before stories. And what's the point of it being a prequel if you're not going to do that? And I feel like every time I get a little bit invested in what's going on with Discovery, they do something like this time crystal thing that feels not at all Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
And as soon as they brought up time crystals again in this suit, because, I mean, Project Daedalus, if you know a little bit about Greek mythology, it was pretty clear going into this episode that Project Daedalus and the Red Angel were the same thing. And so the idea that this entire thing hinges on those stupid, bloody time crystals from season 1, where Mudd had his, like, wacky time crystal watch.
Yeah.
It's like, again, this is all hanging on the not Trekkiest of Trek things.
Yes.
And I mean, I like that they've brought the mother in. I think it feels a little bit like the end of Saw, when you're like, and it was that guy we looked at for a half a second earlier. You never saw that coming. Of course not, because that's horrible foreshadowing.
Yeah.
I do want to say something about the casting of her, because I always think it's funny because I think that she kind of has a similar look to Michelle Yeoh.
She does.
Which Michelle Yeoh is like a mother figure to Michael.
Yeah.
And that actress, I think her name's Sonia Stone.
Sonia
Stone?
She's
Like Tony
half
Tone?
she's half black and half Asian.
Yeah.
Well, she's Korean, so she's not Chinese like Michelle Yeoh, but she's like a combination of Michael and
pretty cool.
and Georgia, which I think was a kind of a great choice, because they are both kind of similar. They have a very similar.
Now here's a question, going back to your question about the brain imprint, the neurological imprint being Michael.
Yeah.
Do we think that, because the grandfather paradox was brought up in this, do we think that Michael is her own mother?
Oh no.
No? Okay.
No. I know I did. Like I'm just like, oh no.
Like, what if that is Michael? What if mom is Michael and she gives birth to herself, and that's just how that system goes?
What?
Yeah, it's a weird time.
It's a paradox. Yeah, where the only way she could exist is if she goes back in time to meet her father to have herself, and that just happens over and over and over again.
Goodness.
Okay, I guess it could be. Oh.
But then it's believing that
have to be-
Ariam's imprint of the imprint is correct.
But
have
then
to be like that to
but then
discover?
we also are saying that the writers are now being that complex where it could be helpful to the writing, where they're
if
not
it's
usually
just
that
simple.
complex. Do you know what I mean on that
Yeah.
end of things? I don't know. Yeah.
I was thinking, Matt, that you have been right the few times that you've said the ship needs a counselor.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and so we have the admirals on board. I wonder if the admirals.
It's true.
Isn't it weird
that she hasn't yet been like, I'm in charge of all this shit. I used to be a therapist. Maybe we need therapists.
Well, because we have all these identity crises going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Michael being the Red Angel, we have Hugh.
Yep.
Hugh's the one. I get those mixed up.
Yep.
And then Saru's not going through a crisis. Saru's very comfortable with his new identity, but that's
But that's risky too.
That's risky
Yeah.
too. So I thought of you when
It was nice to have that little therapy session.
Yeah.
I gotta say, it felt nice to
I
have
like
a
the
bit
things
of a
that she
conversation.
said. Like she had a lot of wisdom. It was nice to see her not have to be like to worry about somebody, but not in a totally frantic way.
Yeah.
And that I also like that he turned. I hate when characters don't turn themselves in to say, I'm struggling with something. It just shows actually how healthy he is.
Yeah.
In comparison to a lot of the people on the ship, right? Because
Volk is just like, I'm fine.
Yeah,
This is
and
great.
he sought it out.
Yeah.
And I thought that showed how strong actually Hugh is.
Actually, on the topic of Volk or Tyler,
Yeah.
can we discuss the fact that there's this impression that Michael has that Tyler is like a lifer at Section 31 and like believes in everything like heart and soul, but he's been working for them for like 3 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Yeah, and I also think that he's been working on most of the time that he's been working for them. He's been on Discovery,
And he was sent
Yeah.
there unwillingly. He was sent
Yeah.
there unwillingly, right?
and he's only ever shown her like a respect and like a belief in her more above Starfleet, above anybody on Discovery and Section 31.
Yeah.
I would say his main religion
He's
is
working for
Michael
Michael.
Burnham.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then everything else is just
Yeah.
like great.
Even last season when he was on Discovery working for the Klingons,
He was
mostly just the
Burnham
100% Burnham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's totally hot for her.
Yeah.
That kiss was pretty hot. I'm not gonna lie.
That was good. That was good.
I'm not gonna be against that.
Yeah. And once again, this episode, the chemistry between Ethan Peck and Sonica Martin Green is fantastic.
That
They're
was a
great.
really lovely scene.
Yes, they're great together.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to see.
Yeah.
Oh, and the sibling. Oh, and the way that he very almost like not knowingly embarrasses her, sort of
Yes.
tells her off.
This is not unlike your.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he does know. Like, I think he wants to get under her skin.
Oh, I mean, he was
Like,
like,
I
under her
think he
skin a
wants
little
to
bit, but I don't think he understood.
little brother.
Yeah,
This is consistent with your personality.
Yeah, he was being like a bratty little brother.
Yeah.
And
Being a
she's
little
like,
dick.
"Great, thanks, Bob."
Thanks for
Thank
that.
God- thank God
that was
for
actually a
those
beautiful edit where there was just that moment
Yeah,
of
it
her.
was nice.
Okay.
I like her. I like when her emotion isn't pure rage sadness, because that conversation with Leland. Oh my God.
Yeah.
She has been playing, and it's not Sonika's fault. She's been given these scenes where she's just playing. I'm supposed to have been raised on Vulcan, but I'm now going to have a rage fit attack and be so sad. And it's just like, I'm growing really tired of that beat.
Yeah.
There are only 14 episodes in this season, and
Yeah,
she's
she-
probably had that beat in half of them.
Yeah, Sonequa, like, I did like a couple of things in the Leland conversation, but not the entire thing, because I felt like she would have more restraint because of her upbringing.
You would think.
But, you know, I liked her in the elevator with Tyler, you know,
Yeah.
because I liked how she got emotional, but then she, like, did the
Reined it in.
Picard.
Yeah.
You know, she pulled on her, and I was just like, yeah, that's where I think that she should be most of the time, and that's in my opinion. I did like the conversation with Leland when she first walked in, and she said, "You're capable of like moral gymnastics."
Yeah.
'Cause that's like a Kant. That's like
Yeah.
that's a Kant reference. I know this because I have I've read some stuff on Kant, in particular mixed with Star Trek, because there's a book called Star Trek and the Wrath of Kant.
Oh, wow.
amazing.
It's Star Trek and philosophy. It's a Star Trek, and I thought that was neat because it actually it was exactly what they were talking about, and about some of the things that they were talking about in the episode, the themes, where Kant talks about your struggle with your morality only can be tested if there's like an evil. There's like there has to be the balance of the bad with the good for you didn't even know that you're moral, kind of thing. And so I thought I like that they threw that in there, and that you also push humans push the boundaries of what their morality is, and they actually adopt things that they just make up to make it like, oh, this is okay. We can put this in this moral box because I've decided these things. You know, I'm just gonna throw it, and that's what Leland did.
Yeah.
You know, and even Spock could be, you know, like have that issue too.
Yeah.
A lot of the choices he makes. So I mean, they do have these great themes. The execution. Like, obviously they're thinking about the dialogue they're thinking about is very specific.
Yeah, but I found the dialogue in that scene, I found it completely hard to, you know, and get into. Why did Leland react that way?
But yeah,
Like,
that's what I mean. Like, the theme is right.
Yes.
But the execution is not
exactly.
because the language that they're saying actually matches each other, but how it's portrayed is not not smooth.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain amount of episode craft that this team is still not at yet. And to be fair, this team has been ripped apart, kicked out. Like, we've lost so many showrunners, they've gone through so many directors, they've gone through so many writers, and yeah, they're not good at this. And they're trying to, they can get there sometimes. And I think if they could keep their team consistent long enough, they might get to a place where they're doing it consistently. But they keep like hiring on this person who does a great job, and now they're spun off to work on this show, and this person comes on to work on a great show, and send them off to work on that one instead. And it's like, guys, keep your team around long enough to be a good team. You're just gonna make 3 real shit Star Trek shows.
I'm just wondering, like, I know I said this last season, and I was like, oh, you know what? Next season we're gonna it'll be different, but then they change showrunners again, so it's like something you can predict.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, will it ever get more consistent when they have the showrunner? Maybe. But we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Kurtzman and the writer of last week's episode are officially co-showrunners for season 3. So, I mean, last week's episode had its ups and its downs. I wrecked it. You trekked it.
I think I wrecked it.
You wrecked it.
And I not only trekked it, but I actually really liked the episode. I think it was a very strong episode and a restrained episode, in my opinion. But
I find production-wise and execution-wise, I find that the actors are given too much leeway to mumble. Is it me, or do they often they throw the lines away? There's too much for them to say. Perhaps they don't have enough time to film the scripts that they have in front of them.
Well,
or the storylines.
Patrick Stewart once said that he approached Star Trek like a period piece, with noble, elevated language that needed to be treated in such a way. And I feel like there are modern directors and modern actors who are taught to like throw the line away, like it doesn't matter, and aren't really taught to enunciate and don't really perform the script like it matters. And I feel like maybe we'll see the Picard show do a little bit better because he will elevate that crew and that cast.
I think people forget, we talked about this season 1 too, Star Trek is a melodrama, guys. Like, I never really stare at the camera like this, but I'm like, it's a melodrama. So if you're listening, it's a melodrama. That's why you see somebody like Anthony Rapp have a real power over the language, Star Trek language. If you really think about it, if you look at his scenes, Stamets scenes, he's so clear. Everything's succinct. He's a Broadway actor. Everything is like...
projected
we said, like, well, I said in season 1, it's like he knows he's in a melodrama,
and
everybody else doesn't know they're in a melodrama.
I feel like Doug Jones knows he's in a melodrama.
Yes, he does.
Those are the only 2 actors, and I think there's something about Anson Mount in this season. He feels like he is a cowboy from a Western who is now on a starship.
Yeah.
And I think that's what worked for Kirk. And I think it's working really well for Anson Mount. It's sad he will not be around next season because he's one of our favorite parts of this.
And definitely
it's been confirmed he's not around for
so
season 3. So the
Defense Against the Dark Arts continues.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, they're just going to keep like losing every time. And maybe by the 7th season, they'll be like, you know what, Saru? You get to be the captain.
Soon I feel like it's going to go past Defense Against the Dark Arts and get Murphy Brown secretary.
Yeah.
Because maybe it'll be like a few of them a season. Maybe we'll get like...
maybe.
I just want to say one more production thing. One thing that they do that is distracting and irritating. It's because the bridge is too big.
The football field. Yep.
So every time there's a moment where they need a reaction from for some reason, they often need a reaction from every single person on that in that football field. And so they'll cut to each one of them. And there's like 20. And so for a minute, you see heads turning.
Yeah.
In distress, in shock.
On the Enterprise, you used to be able to see everyone go,
yes,
in a wide shot, and you're done.
Yeah, and like the turning up, I feel like I'm glad that they turned up the lights a bit, but I feel like they can turn up the lights a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, and those lens flares.
And spend more time writing stuff that's on the ship so that we actually get to know your characters. Yeah. One of the best scenes in this episode is the one with Michelle Yeoh and Stamets and Tilly and Culber, because of how tight it is, how they're having a real conversation that's not just, not frantic. And a discovery, like a reveal without consequence. But it was like just a real conversation. It was rooted in some history that we have that they created in the show. Things like that are really necessary. I think a lot of the reasons why people are more drawn to the Orville in some ways is because we know the characters. We're getting to know the characters. Most of the episodes are on the actual ship that the show is based on.
And everyone on the bridge matters.
Yeah.
And so whether it's a Bortus episode or not, whether it's a Kelly episode or not, what happens to them, we care about it.
Yeah.
And we see in the back, there was this one beautiful moment where he's on the phone talking to his digital girlfriend, and in the background you just see Seth MacFarlane like
yes.
And that's all you need. You don't need a cut.
Yeah.
You've got background.
Yeah.
When it's lit well enough and the shots work, you're able to show more than one person in a frame, and it's all you need. And I feel like that's the Star Trek way to do it, as opposed to cut around the football field. You cut to engineering because it's a different room.
Yeah, they're definitely like following on Orville the was particularly a TNG book of how to build something. And to Sonia's point, I think I'm going to remember what I'm going to say. That the closeness of the characters, how we see how we perceive them, and how the actors behave. So I think they'd be more on the hook if it was more isolated, more about them in those moments. Then their language would be more on the hook because they have to have those deeper conversations. That's why you like that conversation between Spock and Michael,
Yes.
because it's just a breath, you know? And I feel like with Discovery, I do like the show, but it needs to, like, you need to take a breath. You need to calm things down. It's like basketball or like a sport where the coach is like, okay, everybody, you know, we're going to have a timeout and then we're going to go out there and everything slows down, you know, before we start
going hard again.
Because it just, you lose information.
Yes.
You lose information, plot points. And you have to kind of go back. You know, we're different. We're probably watching. We're doing a close watch.
Yes, I'm taking
right.
notes.
So we need to talk about the show.
Yeah, we're paying some attention.
But people that are just watching it 1 week, they're not going to go back. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and in the Netflix age where there's so much new content, no one's going to rewatch anything. Who's going to rewatch Discovery? Like, there's a new season of Stranger Things coming. You don't have time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about whether these episodes trekked it or wrecked it. And this is our second last chance to do this, to compare these two. So let's see. Vanya.
Me.
Did the Orville trek it or wreck it for you?
This is so hard. We didn't talk about the Orville as much as we talked about Discovery and the details of it. And I feel like it's hard. This is hard because it's not like there's never been a Star Trek episode that is not like really rooted in Star Trek. Definitely we've had those kinds of episodes where they're not rooted in science as much. But I felt like
Sub
this...
Rosa.
Yeah. But even that had like a scientific element of why
they,
things
threw
were
something
really
screwy
happening
at the end after doing a ghost story.
I'm gonna say that I liked this episode. I thought it was original, and I really liked Scott Grimes' performance. And they did have like these nice tilts to like 20th century. I mean, Leighton Meester, who's the guest star, is like a Gossip Girl. She's literally a Gossip Girl character. So I thought that was neat. But I'm gonna say it wrecked it.
Hold on, like it wasn't Star Trek or it wasn't good?
It wasn't Star Trek.
Okay.
Good, but not Star Trek.
Interesting. Sonia, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree with everything she said. For me, it was a charming episode. I really liked Scott Grimes' performance. Everything you say, I wish I could think of something different to say, but it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't Star Trek for reasons of a lack of depth in the science, and the B story was really thin, you know, kind of shallow. And I'm sorry, I enjoyed the show, but I didn't feel that it was a Star Trek show.
I've got to say, it trekked it 100% for me, because it gave us a beautiful setup, it gave us a beautiful end, it went on a moral journey, it showed us the importance of being connected to actual humans instead of digital humans. I think there was a really beautiful layer of social commentary on top of this episode. For me, this episode of The Orville was Star Trek, chef's kiss at its best.
I don't think those things that you're saying about the moral, like the overall, the social commentary, could have been pushed further. Yeah. The envelope could have been pushed further. All that stuff on the table, you know, could have been, that B plot could have been like, you could have talked, it didn't even have to be overly sciencey, but you could have talked about where we came from. They had like a little newspaper moment, you know, but where they came from, what it's rooted in.
The climate disaster jab was brilliant. You just needed the one.
Yeah, I wish they talked about more of those things, where they came from. I wish we knew about a history about where, like, there's so many humans there, you know.
But I feel like it did the same kind of job that the Neutral Zone did about bringing us a time capsule from the past. And in that episode, we had 3 human time capsules. And they each were like, hey, I was a country singer who drank myself to death. And there were these like different interesting characters. Or I'm a wealthy tax accountant or whatever. And I'm a surprised housewife. And so these 3 perspectives were interesting to see how they fit into our world in the future. And so it was fun to watch that Inside Out, where we've got Grimes like going to these beautiful
having his
past
Leah
moments.
Brahms, his Geordie Leah Brahms moment. I felt for him. It's not like I felt for him as like a single person. I feel like his friends are shitty. They were. I don't think they were nice, and that to me was not Star Trek enough. Like they weren't supportive enough.
I think they were looking out for him. They were looking
out for him. Yeah, they were looking out for him, but it was such tough love. Like it was like overly tough love, I felt, for somebody who clearly has been struggling for a while with his loneliness.
I don't know.
You
If I went
know?
over to my friend's house and he was like, hey, I just dug up this Sega Genesis. I've been playing Altered Beast all day, every day for 3 weeks straight. What do you think? I wouldn't sugarcoat that
No,
answer.
you don't sugarcoat it, but you also don't go to a bar with that friend and say, yeah, chicks continue to let me fuck them all the time, and then walk out of the bar. You know what I mean? Like John did. And then just sit there and watch your friend stand there while he has to defend himself. And he doesn't even have a seat at the bloody table. Yeah. And then you just get a shot back in and then drink your drink. That's like, I mean, they weren't sensitive. Even when they went to her house, they were like, oh, we're too cool for this. We're from the future and these people are old-timey. You know, I just felt they weren't supportive enough, like the way I would see it in Star Trek, where they would be tough, but still, like, kind of, you know, carry their buddy. Like, I felt like they needed to do that more, and I feel like the social commentary could have been bigger.
I agree.
Stronger.
I agree. If this episode hadn't happened, it wouldn't have been a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But most of the Orville and most of Star Trek in general, you can pitch almost any episode out of a season of The Next Generation, and it's inconsequential.
I feel like it was too centered on Grimes without being more about the overall story. Like, it was that conversation with him and Kelly, I was like, oh, like partway through that conversation, I was like, oh yeah, they're still talking. Like, you know what I mean? Because I was just like, oh, they're still going on. Like, she's still telling the story about how Ed changed her life and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, what?
Oh,
you know,
I really love that scene.
I like chunks of that, parts of that scene, but I felt like it went on too long. Like, I felt like her song at the beginning went on too long. You know, the pacing, it didn't get it for me. Yeah. But it wasn't a bad episode. But it just, to me, wasn't Star Trek.
Okay, well, how about Discovery? Was the Red Angel Star Trek to you?
Oh, me again.
Yep.
Okay, so, yes, Trek did. This is gonna...
I really feel like you're evolving your sense of what Star Trek is at a much better rate than I am, I gotta say. Kudos to you.
I do think that it wasn't a strong episode. I feel like Orville's episode was a stronger episode.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree.
However, I do think that in their attempt, yes, it wasn't polished enough in their attempt to talk about the time paradoxes and that sort of thing. Wasn't as strong enough that they can be as I know they can be, but I still think it was Star Trek. I think the science was Star Trek. I think some of the reveals were Star Trek. I think the compassion and the support, like, of Spock and, you know, the relationships there were Star Trek. And even Tyler, how he talked to Michael about, you know, what the job was to be done, but also supported her there, was Star Trek. That's my point.
Sonia,
Can
did
you
this
ask
episode
me first every once in a while so
you don't have to listen to that and then be very convinced?
No, I was convinced. I just always have to repeat what she says because you say it so much more beautifully.
No,
it trekked it for me, but it was bad Star Trek. It was badly done. It was badly done in terms of. Actually, it doesn't make sense. So it did trek it for me. I wish that the writing had been cleaner and the explanation of the science had been cleaner. I just wish the storyline were less convoluted, but I liked some of the things that they did with the science, right, in the story. The fact that they had to come up with a way to neutralize the Red Angel, they had to come up with that plan. Mm-hmm. That felt very Star Trek to me. Again, the relationships, right, those quiet moments where you pull back, those very Star Trek to me as well. And especially with two beloved characters now. I mean, we really love Spock and Michael together, and we just love them now. And for those two reasons, it was Star Trek, even though the episode was disappointing, even in some major ways.
Okay, I hear you. Now, I've got to say, on Star Trek, when you kill a red shirt, you don't care. Arium was a red shirt. And this 5-minute funeral where we tug on your heartstrings and fail miserably at it didn't do it. That was not Star Trek.
That was not Star Trek.
Time crystals sound like Star Wars needs time crystals. Space fantasy needs time crystals. We've got dilithium crystals. That's enough.
Right.
That's all. Like, we've got this kooky weird crystal that makes everything happen, and now we've got frigging mushrooms. Like, there's enough weird bullshit that has been invented on Discovery in a 700 hours of science fiction world, they decide to invent new bullshit. And so in that way, that's not Star Trek. Then this whole thing about what's happening with Section 31, not Star Trek. And, like, every element of this story, the bad pacing, the bad science, the bad telling of a simple story, everything about this episode to me was not Star Trek. I enjoyed parts of this episode. I thought parts of this episode was some of the worst I have ever seen Discovery do. And it happened at the same time, in the same 47 minutes of my life, and it was weird. But this episode, in no universe for me, Trekked it. It was not truly horrible television, but it did not Trek it for me.
I can't believe how opposite we've been with you in this.
I know.
It's
been fascinating.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go back on anything I said though.
Me either.
That's fair. That's fair. I like the number of different opinions and the voices and
I think we all care about certain aspects of the experience we're having with the shows.
Yeah.
Although you and I have been on the same in sync the last 2 weeks.
Although last week you and I were in sync, so it's interesting to see how this changes.
The Orville, I have to admit, like I definitely am, and it's for a reason because I feel like they need to, pump things up a bit.
Yes. Well, Seth said on Twitter, right? Seth said on Twitter that next week they go out with a bang, which is weird because on IMDb they have 3 more episodes left and they have air dates. So I don't know if we're getting another thing where he thinks the show is over and then 2 episodes are getting like whipped into another season. I don't know what's going on with Fox. I don't think Fox knows what's going on with Fox since they got bought by Mickey Mouse. It's very confusing. So I think we definitely have 3 more episodes of this show we're making at least. Maybe 4.
Yep. Depends
on how all of these episodes are released. So tell us what you thought. Let us know if they're right, if I'm right, if we're all wrong. I'm loving getting to go through the comments and reply to people and tell them what I didn't think of that. That's great. And hey, let us know. Do you think that Michael's mother is Michael?
That's a fascinating. It really blew my mind. It really blew my mind. That is fascinating. I was so sure I was right.
And you were. Maybe you are. For 43 minutes of this episode, Vanya, you were right.
Yes.
Take it. Take the win.
I was just like, all that television watching.
Pays off.
Come to, and then they just kind of pulled the rug out from under me. It's just such a Discovery thing to do.
Right? So let us know what you think, and we will see you next week to talk Discovery. It's going to be a little bit before we get to talk Discovery and the Orville, but we're looking forward to next week too. See you then.